Hello, everyone, and welcome to Nightcap Candid Cafe Conversations. We're here again. I'm Maria. Hello. Welcome back to the chairs. I have a lovely person here. If you couldn't tell, everybody that I bring here is lovely, but today is especially lovely. New friend of mine. We met back at PAX in last year,
2022, that's it.
Jeez.
Hello,
Matt.
It's been a long winter.
It's been a long time. Hi, Matt. Hello.
Hi.
Hello,
Maria.
Hello.
Hi. Thanks for having me at the cafe. I'm super excited.
Gosh. You're welcome.
I'm pumped.
It's a cozy time. Before we get into the nitty gritty of who you are, what you bring, and all that sort of stuff, I noticed you have a mug of beverage. I too have a mug of my favorite beverage, gender fluid. But
nice.
It's also chamomile tea. What sort of beverage are you bringing today?
What sort of beverage am I bringing today?
Yeah, what's in your mug?
Am I allowed to say that I have beer in my mug?
An adult beverage? Yes.
I have an adult beverage.
Yes.
You can see the foam. I just poured it in. Yeah.
I love it. Listen, we don't gatekeep beverages here. Do drink whatever you would like to. Do so responsibly.
Absolutely.
Cheers
Absolutely.
to whatever you all have in your cups today. Fantastic. My tea is still steeping, so that's just going to do its thing. And we're going to spill some tea about TTRPGs today. But before we get into the discussions, who the heck are you and how'd you get into my cafe? No, but who are you? Matt, you are Matt with one T, correct?
Matt with one T. That's actually
T.
a silly story. I remember growing up in the old Pokemon games. For some reason, my full name, which is Mateo, Matteo, didn't fit like the character limit for the who you are in the OG Pokemon Red and Blue games. Mm-hmm. I couldn't put the whole thing. So I put Matt with one T. I don't know why. But ever since, I've been Matt with one T, despite the fact that my name has two T's in it. And a lot of people always ask me. A lot of people think I'm Spanish because Mateo with one T is Spanish. But I'm Italian. There's two T's in my name. But I go by Matt with just the one T. And who am I outside of somebody who still plays Pokemon as an adult?
What sort of stuff that's fun that you do on the internet, or that the internet mostly, because that's where we are.
Yeah, that's where we are. That's where we met, sort of. Actually, I think you're one of the rare people, Maria, that I met in person. Mm-hmm. And I associate you to you in person more than I associate you to your internet body of work. But anyway, I'm Matt. I'm the host of RolePlayChat. It's a tabletop RPG discussion podcast. It's been running for over 4 years now, which is kind of hard to believe. And every episode I'm joined by a guest in the space. We talk about a variety of topics, role-playing game specific, with the objective of sharing the things that we like and the things that work at our table, in the hopes that they can inspire the people listening to adopt those things for themselves or try them out or whatever.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
I didn't realize it was.
I guess.
I didn't realize it had been. I guess I did. I knew that it was either 3 or 4 seasons, because I was looking. I finally followed you on Spotify. Go follow
I appreciate
Spotify.
That. Thank you.
But I didn't realize I knew that you had a new season coming up, because we had talked about it during PAX back last year, and I didn't realize it was 4 years though. That's awesome. That's fantastic.
Yeah, it's cool. It's hard to believe that I've been doing this for 4 years and I haven't repeated a theme or topic of conversation.
Yeah.
In that much time. There's just so much to talk about in tabletop RPGs. That's why I'm so pumped to talk tabletop. I could do this nonstop, every day, all day. It's it's been a blast.
Let's talk some general TTRPG stuff, and then I do want to dive a little bit into the show itself. Actually, scratch that. We're going to do it the other way around, because this is my show.
Sure,
we're going to talk about your show, and then we're going to talk about TTRPGs, because I know we can talk about TTRPGs for 1,000 years.
Yes.
So, let's talk about your show. Your show's been around and about. It's just in podcast form. Is that correct?
That's it. Yeah,
Great.
It's gone through a variety of different formats. We were on YouTube at one point. That didn't vibe. I didn't like the short form content wasn't for me. I'm more of the let's ramble for as long as we have to and be entertaining in that format instead. So yeah, Roleplay Chat is on podcast. Any podcasting platform you listen to, it's there. And it's Roleplay Chat, all like separate words. And role is like when you're role playing. So ROLE play chat, because that's my area of fun is putting on characters and role playing. So that's where the name comes from. Yeah.
Great. I would like to peel back the curtain and let just everyone, including Matt here, know I have been, in fact, spelling it incorrectly for the last couple of weeks in my own notes. And that's just very silly for me. Which is really funny because when I went to go search for it, I absolutely spelled it correctly because I found it. So I somewhere the pen to paper did me dirty.
That's funny.
Okay, so over the last 4 years, what are some of the guests that have been on your show that you're like, oh, this was really fun, or the conversation we had was really cool, and what have been some of your favorite topics so far? Now I know 4 years is a long time, and you've, I'm sure, talked a lot. So you don't have to pick your top tier favorites.
Okay. I'll list out a few that I'm really proud of, and it's fun because sometimes I get really, really lucky and I get the opportunity to talk to somebody who is doing this at like the highest level. And then other times I'm talking to people who are just starting off or who are new to the hobby or who are maybe, doing their own thing in their own little niche, and they're not, they're focusing very much on their small community and that's it. So a very widespread of creators joined me on Roleplay Chat. One of the big ones that I have to say every time is I got the pleasure of talking to Brennan Lee Mulligan on the show.
I saw that and I was like, ha! What a delight.
He was one of the first guests too. He just his agent reached out to me, and this was back when I had a co-host on the show, Chris, who had to leave because of his own personal things. Still love him to death, but he had to step away from the show. And yeah, we got this email from Brennan's agent saying do you know who Brennan Lee Mulligan is, and have you heard of Dimension 20? And I was like, yes. Is this spam?
Is this yeah, I feel like that would be my first instinct, is this can't be real, right?
Yeah.
Right.
So yeah, that was really cool. It's one of the earlier episodes of the show, so you'd have to dig back, but if you look up Roleplay Chat Brennan Lee Mulligan, you'll find it, no doubt. But then since then, yeah, we've had all kinds of cool folks join me on the show. Some people that I consider to be close friends of mine. So folks like close friends of mine because of this space. So people like Gamer Mom Luna or David Tiltstra, Nick Galvin from Scry Society. They're all, amazing. And I mean, the list goes on for a very long time, but these are all people that I'm really happy to have met in this space, including you, Maria. But, they've come on the show and they've chit-chatted with me. A few other of the people that I would consider to be my quote-unquote game master heroes also came to talk with me. So Seth Skorokowski, who's really big in the Call of Cthulhu space, came and joined me and chit-chatted, and he was an absolute wonder to talk to about game master philosophies and how you come into your own as a game master, and that was kind of neat. Greg Tito and his co-host Shelly Mezzanoble came and joined me to talk about being inspiring and being inspired by all the wonderful folks that are in this community. So they were really fun to talk to also. And then I'll shout out a fellow Canadian, Daniel Kwan from the Asians Represents podcast. He's a really fun-loving guy who has all kinds of cool insights. And I talked to him very recently. And yeah, he was really cool to talk to you about mythology and how you incorporate that into your games in a way that's well researched, and you do justice to the source material. So that was really fun too.
That's so cool. it's so very fun to be able to talk to people from such wide swaths of experience and corners of the TTRPG space. And it's so cool to also be doing a show, me, with someone who also does a show, and be like, I empathize so heavily with like getting that one message from that person and being like, is this real? Are you sure? Because last year I on a whim DM'd B. Dave Walters and said, hey, do you want to be on my show? And like within an hour he was like, we're gonna figure out when, and yes. And I said,
awesome.
So you can listen to, that's the season finale of last season, if anybody's so inclined. But like it's so wild to have those moments of like these people that you respect in the spaces, like that feel, that feel big, that feel untouchable in some kind of capacity. And actually it turns out they're just really cool people who just also want to talk about the cool things that you want to talk about sometimes. So it's
absolutely, that's really cool. I've heard good things about Dave Walters too. So
it's really, I highly encourage anybody to go specifically just to listen to B. Dave talk about and feel good about yourself. B. Dave is very good about that. Speaking of feeling good about yourself, though, I'm going to ask you some questions about your show.
Okay, cool. I really appreciate that, by the way.
Oh, good, great,
I'm
great,
pumped.
good, yeah, good. Okay, so your show. What was the origins and the inspiration of why you wanted to make a show about talking about TTRPGs to the capacity that you are?
Yeah.
What was the impetus for 4-ish plus years ago?
So I'm going to give you two answers, Maria, because there's RolePlayChat kind of has two forms. So RolePlayChat, when it started, was very much a two-person conversation between me and my co-host Chris. And the impetus behind that, and that's kind of the first season and a half of RolePlayChat. The intention there was every time we played a role-playing game, Chris and I would spend sometimes more time after the game talking to one another about the things that went well, the things that didn't go well, the things that deviated from the players do one thing and then now we find ourselves in this whole other realm of possibilities that were unplanned for and things like this. So we just spend hours after every game talking about role-playing games. And we kind of, one day it just hit me and I'm like, you know what? We might as well put a microphone in front of us, record it, and see if anybody else wants to be kind of, listen in, be a fly on the wall to what we have to say about how traps can slow down a game, or how puzzles can be really fun if implemented properly. So it started off as a very much like a strategy sharing device. And then when Chris left, I was faced with this decision of, do I do I stop doing what I've been doing, or do I poll the community to see who would want to join me? And I still remember to this day feeling super nervous about sending out a tweet saying, hey, RolePlayChat needs guests. Who would like to be a guest? And that was one of the first times I had a tweet that just exploded. Like, there were so many people, some people who I knew well enough, like on the Twitter space, others who I'd never even spoken to, who were like, please sign me up, I want to come and talk on your show. To the point where, like, I haven't even been able to reach back to those people to have them join. There were so many people that expressed interest. And that was when I was like, you know what? There's a lot of voices out there that want to be heard. There's a lot of voices out there that aren't often heard. I have an opportunity to give people a space to be heard. Let's try and get as many different people as possible that have as many differing opinions on what makes this game fun. Have them come to the table and just just hang out and just talk and learn about what they do and why they do it in their tabletop role-playing games. And then, the rest is history. So I've been doing that now for much longer than what me and Chris were doing before. There's 3 seasons now of me and the community sharing their wealth of experiences with the Roleplay Chat listeners. So yeah, I guess my answers to boil it back down is, first I was having these conversations already, and then second was this realization of like, wow, there's this whole community of people that I wouldn't have had the opportunity to hear or talk to if I didn't do this. There's definitely people out there who would like to hear those opinions and broaden their horizons. So yeah, that's it. That's why.
Awesome. That's awesome. I do like that there's a sense of progression of like it changed, but only for the positive, and not because you lost, a co-host, but because instead you shifted from, oh, how can I keep this running, to, oh, how can I take this good thing and make it even better by including, like you said, more voices that are not just your own, more opinions and creative peoples, and like that. It's super cool. What I'm going to do now is I'm going to steal a little slice of your podcast. I'm going to ask you some TTRPG questions.
Okay.
And we're going to go from there.
Cool, let's do it.
I have 3-ish kind of questions. First one I feel like is a little bit of like a softball question, which is, what is your favorite TTRPG system that you are playing right now, or soon, if you're not playing anything right now, what is a system that you really enjoy playing and you really enjoy running as of this recording?
Cool. Yeah. Well, so I'm currently running a Dungeons & Dragons 5th edition game, but that is not my favorite system, and it's not my favorite system to run, nor is it my favorite system to play. My favorite system to play is the Fate Core system. I adore the Fate Core system. I think statistically, I'm a math guy, so statistically the Fate Core system does a really good job of bell curving everything in such a way that neutrality is the default result of your dice rolls. And I'm going to get a little bit crunchy here, which is kind of out of character for me because I'm not a very crunchy person when it comes to games. But what I think that does extremely well is that when you invest points into your character to be really good at sneaking or really good at using like firearms or whatever it is that you want your character to be good at, you're good at. Like there's not this giant swing of probability like you see in D20 systems where you still roll and you might fail at doing the thing that you're supposed to do. In Fate Core, most of the time, if you're really good at sneaking and you are called upon to roll a stealth roll, you're doing it. It's just a matter of how well do you do it. So I can really appreciate that. And get me off the soapbox whenever you want, Maria, but another great thing I love about the Fate Core system is that it's a very collaborative process. When you introduce a new space for the players to fiddle around in, let's say you introduce like a town square with a fountain in the middle, you do this thing where you generate what are called aspects for the space that you're in. And these aspects describe the space narratively. So let's say we're in the town square and one player is going to say, you know what, this town square has a lot of greenery. There's a lot of trees and flowers and potted plants. Okay, so we add greenery as an aspect for this space. Then somebody says, yeah, but the fountain's broken. So there's an old broken fountain that's not running. And you do that, you add 3 or 4 aspects to the space. And then as you're playing in that space, if at any time you're put in a situation where you think one of the aspects of that space comes into effect and would influence your die roll or the outcomes of your obstacle resolution, you can call upon that. You can say, you know what, I'm trying to hide I'm going to find a bush to hide in because there's a lot of greenery here. You check off greenery, and now you have a bonus to your stealth roll because you've utilized the narrative space that you created in a way that mechanically impacts the game. And so I really love that. I've yet to find another system that marries that collaborative creative process with mechanical output that like is tangible. Like it makes a significant difference on your roll if you have this bonus, right? So yeah, I think it does a really, really good job. Its only flaw is that it isn't built for very long games. So these like never-ending adventures that some people tend to run,
5-7 year campaigns or however long. Yeah,
it's not really built for that. But I'm okay with that. I'm a one-shot guy anyway, so let's go. Let's pull out a Fate Core game and have a good time. Have you played Fate, Maria?
I have played a little bit. It was one of the first, so I think, correct me if I'm wrong, is the Dragon Age game a Fate Core game, or is that something else? It might be something else.
I don't know. I think it's something else.
It might be something else. But I did play a Fate Core, like 1 or 2 shot. And I've done at least one charity game that was a Fate system.
Awesome. Cool.
Because I think I played a teenager who was really into kaijus and like knew like everything about them, and then we were thrust into like there was like literal kaijus, and I had the best day of my life. But yeah, I do remember it feeling very like you like in the moment I was like I literally can pick anything. I can pick anything. I can put anything in this box, which feels a little overwhelming, but then when you are able to use that thing in that very specific way that you were thinking of, or you're like, what am I going to do? And this thing just happens to be because you all talked about it beforehand, you know, like in that town square, you know, oh, you're running away from someone and there's potted plants here. I'm going to pick up a potted plant and I'm going to chuck it at them and hope that it slows them down. You know, that kind of thing, that because you collaboratively built spaces, you are more aware and attached to what's in those spaces. Whereas sometimes with like, you know, not to knock like super narrative flowery people like myself who will go on and on about it, how a space looks and smells and feels and all that sort of stuff when I'm running games. But as a player, sometimes you can just like, you know that you're in a building, and sometimes you forget that there are wall sconces, or that there is a barrel of ale in the corner, or like something like that, because you've moved on and you don't have those like tangible things that remind you like, oh, hey, actually, if you remember that this thing is here, you could get like a bonus and stuff. So it's really cool that Fate does stuff like that. Did you have any other answer about like playing and versus running systems?
Oh yeah. So I love playing in Fate Core because it lets me sort of influence the game master in some way.
Yeah.
But as far as running games, I mean, lately I've really been on a kick where I like running Call of Cthulhu games. I really like the way that characters, they feel a little bit more disposable, and that sounds terrible because I'm not the kind of person that's going to go out there and like purposely kill my players, but I've always been a real fan of like these low fantasy settings. What better than playing in our own world where everybody plays a human being like investigator,
a very mortal person.
yeah so I'm exploring that. It's been a lot of fun, and there's a lot of cool free resources out there too. Like if people listening haven't had the opportunity to try Call of Cthulhu, there's a really fun solo adventure that you can play called Alone Against the Flame, I think is what it's called, and it's like a very much choose your own adventure inspired game. It's a free resource you go find that teaches you how to play. Like you don't even have to know how to play, it teaches you as you play, and then you come across situations where you like roll dice, and it helps determine the outcome of like, you're faced with this thing. Roll dice. If you fail, go to read entry 55, whatever. I don't know where I was going with that, but I've been having fun with fun with that.
Yeah, Call of Cthulhu is one of those systems that I was introduced to. I kind of always heard about it in like the periphery. I was introduced to it via, what was it? It was Pulp Cthulhu, I think, which is just another kind of version of Call of Cthulhu. Through some friends of mine who were streaming it, and I was like, this is an interesting TTRPG. Up to that point, I had just basically known Dungeons and Dragons and Savage Worlds, and that was it. And then they had this very silly, fun game that they were streaming. I was like, it would be kind of cool to play that. And eventually I started playing Delta Green, which is another kind of slight version of Call of Cthulhu.
That's like science fiction Call of Cthulhu, right? Am I
wrong? Not quite. I feel like Delta Green is you're literally like basically a subset. You're basically like the FBI, but for like supernatural stuff. But you're not technically part of the government. But you're like, it's kind of like that nature. You're a team that is sent to these locations to deal with whatever supernatural problem is there. So it's very similar in aspects to Call of Cthulhu, though, where you are very squishy. In Call of Cthulhu, guns, you will die. Like, everybody, I think, had a max of like 6 hit points. Like, you will die if a grenade blows up next to you, probably. So it was very much like still the sense of mortality going against something that is supernatural and unexplainable and unknown, and having to figure out how to deal with it and make sure that nobody else knows about it. You gotta keep it secret, otherwise people get scared.
So like very X-Files, I feel.
I feel like it's very similar to like an X-Files kind of feel, which is kind of cool. It's a very, very fun, like, breath of like, yes, you're mortal, but also you're doing something about it, kind of. And also you can very easily die. I very easily almost died multiple times.
You know, I'd never thought about it this hard before, but I think part of the reason why I like running it so much is because, like you're saying, combat is often a lethality scenario, right? Like, when you enter a combat situation, the players are doing so very deliberately, for the most part. If they're pulling out a gun to instigate combat, that was probably their last resort.
Yeah, exactly.
So I really like that, the gravity that it brings on. I feel like it's really fun to like hack and slash my way through a bunch of skeletons, but it kind of takes away some of that tension.
You do feel a little bit like, I'm gonna get hit, but that's okay.
Exactly. Whereas here it's like, I'm gonna do everything in my power to avoid combat right now, because otherwise we're in for, potentially a really bad outcome. So I really like that gravitas that those kinds of games and those kinds of settings put on combat. Yeah,
I agree 100%. Okay, second question is around the differences. Okay, all I wrote down, because I wanted this to be kind of vague and just us to have a little bit of just a back and forth discussion about it. Running games versus playing in games and how they are different. Now this is going to be a very, like, we're just going to touch just a little sprinkle, because this could literally be an entire, like, 2-hour thing.
It's a cool question.
I'm sure that you have either had, or probably it's on your list of thousands of topics to talk about on your show.
It actually isn't, but I'm totally stealing it. I'm
Great.
Totally
do it.
And I'll say, Maria, this is from Maria. Go listen to the Cafe Talks and then come back.
Yes.
But yes, this is a really interesting question.
But yeah, because we are both, at least in this chat, we've both been players and game runners in various systems. And I think I think I'm coming at this from an aspect of people who maybe have been always players, or who have been neither player nor a game runner, and perhaps maybe are like, what's the difference, you know? And maybe just like a very general, like, you know, 5-10 minute talk of like what is the same, what is different about being a player versus being someone who runs the game, which I think is it's so deliciously fascinating for me.
It's very interesting. I mean, for me personally, I think the biggest distinction is how active do I want to be in the creative process. I think is for me the piece that, if I'm feeling like I want to be very active in the creative process, then being the game master, or the, what do you call it? I never heard that term. Game referee?
Let's just a game runner.
I like that.
There's some, because the D&D calls it dungeon master. There's storyteller. There's keeper. There's like a bunch of the conductor. There it is.
The conductor.
The conductor of the story. Whoever that is. Whatever role that is.
Yeah, I really like that. So whenever I'm being a conductor, I have a tendency to be more creatively, like I am the lead person striving the creation. And that's, I recognize first and foremost that that's not how it's like in every table. But usually when I'm running a game with new players who maybe are unfamiliar with the concept of a role-playing game, or people who are more passive. So that, you know, I'm in this situation where I'm creating cool stuff, I'm putting it in front of them, and then they interact with it in unexpected ways that prompt me to create other stuff that suits their interest. So that's when I'm in the game. That's when I'm in the referee seat. When I want to be perhaps more of a spectator, that's when I want to be a player. And for me, that's, you know, let's go in, let's have somebody else be in charge of coming up with the environment or the sandbox or the story that we're going to follow. And then I'm still going to have my fun. Don't get me wrong. Like, I'm going to jump in whenever I see a really cool moment for my character to roleplay something, or I'm going to, you know, build a really fun build of a character who is going to explore perhaps a psychological facet of myself that I'm eager to explore, or perhaps have like a statistical, like, build a sneaky guy because I'm not used to, I've never run a sneaky guy before, or maybe I want to be like frontline type of character, so let's do that. So it helps me kind of focus my attention, I suppose. So to me, that's the biggest distinction of being a game master or a player. It's how much control creatively do I have the bandwidth for, I suppose.
Yeah.
I don't know if that's go for it.
I think to piggyback off of that, I don't feel like there's a wrong answer. There's never, this particular question, there's not really a wrong answer to, because it is very much like a personal experience of what makes it different for you. For me, it is similar to what you were saying, but I think the best way I can describe it is, where do I want to put all of my focus? Do I want it to be very narrow and have all of my attention, all of my wants, dreams, desires, etc. put into one person and tell a singular person's story? Then I absolutely want to be a player, because when I am put in the player seat, I don't necessarily have to have all of the answers to all of the things and all the potentials or whatever to the entire, you know, world, ecosystem, story at large. All I really, you know, in a very small frame, all I need to really consider is what my character's mindset is, what their place is in this story, and how they're interacting with the people and the world around them. Now, as a player, I also want to make sure that I am interacting with, you know, my fellow players and their characters and all of that to tell a collaborative story. So it's not just, an entire party of protagonists who are trying to tell their own stories, that can lead for a little bit of contention. We're not all chasing our own spotlights is kind of what I try to avoid. But if instead my drive is to focus more broadly, to open up my iris from one singular person to instead a entire village or an entire continent, or if I want to tell a cosmic story, if I'm feeling that inspiration, that drive, that something where I want to figure out all of the mysteries, piece them together, and then give them to people in bits and pieces so that they can then figure it out. If I want to be in the mind space of hundreds of people-ish, or places, or plants, or cosmic entities, or if I want to be the voice of many as opposed to the voice of one, being in the conductor's seat is absolutely a fantastic way to do that. There's some people for which the spoons are not there to be in that seat, and that's okay. That is okay, everyone. There's also systems that can help facilitate that. Powered by the Apocalypse is really, really great for very collaborative storytelling.
I'll add something. You said, I'm sorry to interrupt you, Maria, but I'm going to forget what I was thinking about.
Go for it.
I really like the way you distinguish that, because I think in either sense, whether you're the referee or the player, your creative output is the same, I think.
I agree.
I just feel like when you're the player, and this is for me personally, if I'm going to be a player, I'm taking on the responsibility of telling my story. You know what I mean? If I want to be a character in this story, I'm going to be a player. If I want to be facilitative of telling someone else's story, then I'm going to be a referee. So I think it's two different hats, right? Like, and I'm saying that as if I'm a selfish player. I'm not. Like, obviously when I'm a player, I'm there to help shine spotlight on the rest of the cast also. Yeah. And they're going to shine the spotlight on me. But I think that's a really big distinction too. Like, am I feeling like the person who's going to get the goal? Like, am I I have to get myself in the right headspace of the person who's going to do the slam dunk if I'm a player. And I don't know if that's a popular opinion or not. I feel like sometimes a lot of that pressure is put on the game master because they're the ones kind of orchestrating stuff. But at the end of the day, like, teeing up your fellow players for a really, really cool roleplay moment, I think that's a player. That's a player responsibility. Take it at that point.
Yeah.
And they have to take it.
Like, you can give them this nice cake, but if they don't eat it, well, it's still a nice cake, but now it's going to be over here, and I'll get to look at it because you didn't want it, I guess. Yeah, exactly. Maybe I'll bring it back later.
And who better to either take the cake for themselves or tee up that for another player? Like, when one player, like let's say me, I'm a player at a table, and I notice something about another character who's playing, and they're sad or they're hyped up or something. Man, does it do wonders to have a player character turn to another player character and be like, hey, let's go, I'm here, let's do what you're so pumped to do. And then they jump to the top and they're like, thank you for laying that up for me because I'm gonna slam it down. That's a player responsibility too. Like, yes. it feels broken when a game master, in my opinion, it feels broken when a game master uses like an NPC to orchestrate that. I don't know what my point was, but but yeah.
Those are fantastic bits of advice in there. For being a player, like a person who is running a game is also a player in that game. It's just like we've been saying. It's just like we've been saying. The focus is just slightly different. It's more broadly focused than narrowly focused. You know, I as a person running a game am not gonna zoom in on just specifically one tiny character or facet. Like, for me, I have to focus on a lot of things, which is great, because then there's a lot more for you as a player to like dip your toes in. But from a player standpoint, there is nothing better from me, like for me as a GM, there's nothing better than when players instigate their own
like development
kind of exactly character
Yeah.
development, when they see something, when your players are engaged not only in the story but in wanting to build on top of the story that you've already made and make it even bigger than what you've already planned. So to TLDR of what I was saying there is, if you're a player in a game, be a perceptive player. In that, be as present as you can and pay attention to the players around you and the GM for those moments where you can scoop up that beautiful cake and present it to someone else and be like, here, this is yours. Please eat it because it's delicious and also is your favorite flavor. Or look around for those cakes of your own so that you can notice when someone is presenting you a cake and you can say, thank you, this is exactly what I wanted. And you can have your own good moments that you all worked together to do. Now I want cake.
That's it.
Now I'm hungry.
We're in a cafe, right? You're gonna you're like shipping cake over to me.
Have some cake. Exactly.
But yeah, man, Maria, this is such a good question because it is so different. It's the roles are so similar yet so apart that it, you know, play styles have such a big impact.
Yeah, and the system that you're playing also has a pretty big impact on how the player versus, you know, conductor type storyteller person kind of fit together.
Can I say one last thing? And then you can keep going.
Yeah.
I think another thing too that I consider to be a big difference personally is the element of decision making. Like I think oftentimes there is this bias or this assumption that game masters are making a lot of they're calling a lot of the shots because it's quote unquote their world, or it's quote unquote them who's refereeing the decisions.
Their God.
Yeah. But I think the pendulum swings the other way. To me personally, I think when you're the referee, your job should be to present options, to present things, lists. You're going to have lists. You're going to have possibilities, outcomes that might never happen, treasures that might never be found. As a player, though, you're the one calling the shots because you're the one making decisions. And sometimes players don't make decisions, which is its whole other point of conversation. But you're the one saying, "Hey, my character is going to care about that thing that the game master mentioned. I'm going to charge headfirst into that thing.
I'm going to push these 5 buttons you put in front of me.
That's it. I'm going to push these
to
buttons.
my own detriment."
Or like I'm given a situation where my character has to make a decision and there's no right answer. I'm not going to stall it out. I'm going to commit to a position even if I don't really know where I'm going. I'm going to cede a position and then figure it out later. Play to find out. Absolutely.
Play to find out.
Absolutely.
Yeah. You don't have to have all the answers as a GM or a player. You just have to have the willingness to figure it out as you go.
Yeah. So I'm getting like really I don't know why I'm getting so like
it's because it's so this. it's a great thing to talk about because there's a lot of focus on what kind of system is best for you and like what you know the long and short of it is there's a ton of systems. There's a ton of game systems that you can play in. You can run as many games as you want to. As a person who runs games, if you don't have players who are invested in anything that you're trying to do, if you don't have players, you can't run a game. As players, if you don't play the game, there is no game. If you're not putting some effort into it, then it's not. You're just people hanging out, which is its own fun thing. But if you're going to be at a table, if you're going to say, let's go, let's do an adventure thing, whatever the adventure, fill in the blank adventure is, show up, be, and not literally like physically show up, like that's cool too if you can. But if you've made the commitment of, yes, this is what I want to invest in, I promise you will have a better time if you put the effort into making sure everyone else also has a great time.
I think sometimes too, a problem can be players don't realize that they have that kind of control over the game, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't know how many times a player has told me when I was the game master, a year after playing, they're like, wow, I can't believe you had all of that stuff figured out. And I was like, I didn't. I didn't have that stuff figured out. I was just kind of reacting to what you guys were putting out. Yeah. So I've been making a much bigger effort, and people might get upset with me for this on the internet, but I've been telling players, like, you know what? This whole scenario was generated because you decided to go and ask me about some new religious faction that I didn't even have. It didn't even exist. But you know what? In between games, I created that faction. I created an NPC. You talked to that NPC, and now the whole quest deviated.
And I say that to the player.
Yeah. I give them that perspective. I tell them, I say, this is because of you. This is because of your decision.
Yeah.
And now they know. They're like, oh man, okay, like I control this. I control the story that we're saying.
It's like there was the GM talk back between Brennan Lee Mulligan, Matthew Mercer, and Abria Iyengar, and one of the things that Brennan said that I laugh about, and it's so true though, is in preparing for games and such, you can prepare all you want. And I think they were specifically talking about like character backstories and like, handing, players giving character backstories. But it resonated with me to like just kind of a general sense, and to kind of very, very loosely paraphrase what he said. He was making an example of like giving some sort of flowery description of this person, and then being like, and there's this guy over here, and there's this like really crummy looking goblin in the corner, and then the players being like, fuck this guy, fancy pants, I want to know what's up about this goblin in the corner. And I think in the instance, it was, instead of, describing this flowery person, being like, this is your uncle who absolutely shamed you and your family like 3 years ago, and you've had a vendetta against him. Remember you said that in your backstory? This is him. He's here now. What are you going to do about it? Give them the option to be like, whatever, or go talk to that crummy goblin in the corner, But the idea that I keep pulling from that is that the players are going to chase what is the most interesting to them at that moment. So you as a player have the power to do that. And then as the GM, we have or the storyteller, whoever, you have the power to place whatever you want in front of these players. And if they've given you the blessing of things like backstories, you can choose things that you are pretty dang sure they are gonna bite on. You can present them the prettiest cake ever, and you're pretty sure, like that, crummy uncle that you've had a vendetta against for 3 years, I can just plop him right here, and then it's up to you to decide if you want to do anything about it. But I'll just be over here lighting some candles on top of this birthday cake while you decide.
That's it.
Or they can go to the goblin in the corner, and then we'll have some sort of other kind of adventure, and your uncle will get away with it again, and then there'll be those other kind of things. So I love talking about running games. It's very, very cool. I love talking about playing games. If you want to hear more kind of talks about like this sort of stuff, please go and listen to RolePlayChat, because this kind of stuff all the time. It's very, very cool. It's a very cool thing that you have crafted over the last 4 years now.
That's
going into your fourth
thank
year.
You. Absolutely.
So I have two more things to ask you. These aren't like TTRPG related. These are A little heavier hitting ones. So the first one is, what do you hope or aspire your show to become? Now, this can be like a literal numbers thing. There is no right answer to this. But what are your aspirations, dreams, goals, whatever kind of verbiage you want to use for this show, as long as you have it?
Yeah, well, that's a good question. I mean, I think I want to keep making sure that I get as many different voices on the show as I can. Every time I think I've found like the critical mass of people out there, I'm always surprised to know that I've only learned about a small fraction of them. Every time I think that I've discovered all of the systems that there are to discover, I'm like, oh wait, this is the tip of the iceberg. So I think as far as objectives go, I want RolePlayChat to continue to be a space where people can come and express their opinions about role-playing games. And my job as the host of RolePlayChat, my objective is to find as many diverse voices as I can who come with different experiences, whether that be from their lived experience or their professional experience. A few things that I want to check off the bucket list, though, if I can put some like very tangible things.
Oh yeah.
I really want to do live shows. I did one panel here in my hometown of Ottawa, Canada, and it was at a small convention. It was at the Can Games convention. We had an audience of like maybe a dozen people, and that like basically filled the space that I was given. But that was really fun. It was really cool to do like a live panel show type of conversation. So one of these days I want to find myself at one of the big kid tables, whether that be at PAX, whether that be at like a Comic-Con or something. That's one of the objectives for sure. And then I'm hoping to do some charity stuff too. I've done one. I mean, I've participated in other people's charity work as like a guest, as like a NPC, or as a character or whatever. But I would love to do more charity work. I was able to raise, I think it was $700 or something close to that, with one charity night that I did in collaboration with the Scry Society, and that was really rewarding. It felt really good to be able to basically do this, talk about games with people, and still raise money for for a good cause. So finding that formula though is a little bit trickier than I think it sounds. In an actual play setting, it's a little bit easier to find an engaging way for donations to impact the game.
Sure,
but in like a talk show format, it's a little bit trickier. Yeah. So anyway, that's a couple of like things that I have eventually that I want to check off the list.
That's awesome. Yay. Well, I hope that the show continues for as long as you wish it to continue.
Oh, thanks, Maria. Yeah, I mean, I have no plans of it ever stopping, but we'll see.
Great. Good. The very last question. This is separate from. It could be separate from the show. Could be related. But I wanted to kind of round this out with a more general, deep question, and that is, what is something that you have either learned or something you've been told that has stuck with you, and that is something that you want to make sure that you are able to share with others?
Okay, so I definitely saw this question when you sent it to me, and ahead of time, and I gave this one the most thought of them all, and I kind of have two answers for you. So the first answer doesn't really come from any one particular piece of advice, but through having so many different people join me on RolePlayChat, it's given me this blessed opportunity to realize that there are so many different ways to play this game. And I know it's gonna sound like kind of redundant to say, because I feel like, everyone has their own fun, no shame in finding fun in the way you want to have fun, as long as you're being respectful of everybody at your table. But it really hits home when you have people coming on the show and talking to me for like 2 hours about something that they are super passionate about. So it instilled in me this desire to want to challenge myself, to want to try new things in a role-playing game. And even though I consider myself to be someone who cares a lot about narrative-focused games, to still turn around and try to run an old-school dungeon crawl game, or to still turn around and play a sandbox game, even though I tend to be more linear in the way that I tell stories. So constantly finding ways to challenge myself, whether that be, like I said, running a game that's more combat focused, or maybe running a game where I'm going to track the arrows in a character's quiver, or tracking travel distances, or fiddling around with roleplay or cosplay, or telling stories in a new and interesting way, or not prepping a game at all and just improvising it off the cuff, the whole, like, showing up and running a game with no preparation whatsoever. These are things that I would have never felt comfortable doing. I didn't really feel comfortable doing it either when I did it, but I did it, and I'm grateful that I did it. So I think for people listening, if there's something that you can take away from today's conversation, if anything, is Maria's awesome, and challenge yourself. Give yourself the opportunity to try something that you think is outside of your wheelhouse, or something that you think you don't like. Maybe you don't like, but it's been 5 years since you've done it. Try it again. Revisit something. Tell your table that, hey, cut me some slack. I'm trying something that isn't in my, usual toolbox. Because you might surprise yourself. At the very least, you're going to learn something. So challenge yourself. Try something new. And then the second thing is, I suppose this is also not something that somebody told me, but there is so much good in this community. I know that there is often a story about something bad, and bad stories tend to get the benefit of algorithms in the world that we live in, but there is so much good in this tabletop role-playing game space as well. I have met so many fantastic people. I got to play 10 Candles with complete strangers to me outside of the internet, and have one of the best nights I've had playing role-playing games ever, because of how wonderful this community is. Literally being invited into someone's Airbnb to play role-playing games. That's great. That's so freaking cool. And I wouldn't have it without this. I wouldn't have had that experience, and I wouldn't have met you, Maria, if it weren't for this wonderful community. So I think that another thing that I've learned is just go out there, be good, be yourself, be genuine, create an Instagram account for yourself. Even if you're not a content creator, or create a Twitter account for yourself that is curated to talk about role-playing games, and find your people and have fun, because they're out there. There's a lot of good people out there. So come and find us.
Come and find us. That's a challenge, but also be cool about it.
Yeah, please be cool.
Please be cool about it. Please, I beg of you. It has been such a pleasure, and I'm so glad that we did meet, because it was very strange. I knew of you from other people, and it wasn't until PAX that all of these random, quote unquote random groups of people, like David Tildstra and yourself and Nick from Scry Society and Waffles Maple Syrup, and all of us just were all in one spot. And then all of a sudden we met, and then now it's great, and it's one, and everyone's great. They're all great. But it was such a delight to meet you then. I'm so glad that we were able to our sails, we did not pass like ships in the night. We passed, we were traveling the same direction. We were neighbors in travel. It was such a delight to meet you. It's been such a delight to be able to talk tonight, and also in other things. And I'm excited to be in this space with you, because I think that you are doing something very good and very fun and very uplifting in a space that needs it. So,
thank you.
Yeah.
I appreciate that. And yeah, you alluded to it, but people listening, if you enjoyed this conversation, there's effectively a second part to it. Not canonically, but yeah, Maria's joined me on an episode of Roleplay Chat. It's going to be coming out probably in mid to late July. So come listen to that.
This summer.
coming
soon to a podcast near you. But thank you so much, Matt, for your time, for your thoughts, for your enthusiasm, and all of those good things. Remind everyone where in the world they can find you, they can find your show, they can find all the stuff. And if you've got anything extra going on, let them know.
Cool. Yeah, well, thank you, Maria. First of all, this has been a wonderful conversation, and I'm glad and privileged to have been allowed to come and chit-chat with you again. But yes, Roleplay Chat. Wherever you listen to podcasts, you can listen to Roleplay Chat. Or if you want to listen to me ramble on the internet too, you can follow me on Twitter. It's roll_play_chat. I use that handle pretty much everywhere else too. So on Instagram, on Reddit, on Mastodon, where I'm roll_play_chat at dice.camp. So anyway, yeah, I'm kind of all over the place, and I try my best to put out cool, fun conversation pieces in all of those places. I'm also the interviewer for the Rising Tide Discord community. The Rising Tide Discord community is a space for creatives by creatives, where we interview cool people who have a variety of experiences to help you get your feet off the ground if you're a content creator. I interviewed one of the, I think he was like an executive or somebody kind of important, I suppose, over at Patreon to like learn about how to have a Patreon that is successful. Or I talked to an accessibility consultant on how to make your content more accessible to as large an audience as possible, whether that be people who have hearing or reading impairments or things like that. Among other things. So anyway, yeah, so go check that out. It's the Tabletop RPG Rising Tide community. That's pretty neat too.
Great. Good.
Yeah.
Everybody, thank you so much for being here. Continue to be here, because it's really cool to see you all and to see you, Matt, in spaces and places and such like this. But until next time, everyone, I hope that your cups are cozy and full of something delicious, that you have a fantastic rest of your day, and we will try to do the same. Until next time, everyone. Goodbye.
Bye. Cheers.
Toodaloo.